Hello and happy summer, friends. This is Sam with a quick intro for today's ENCORE episode. As we take some time to refuel and adventure this summer, and we hope you are doing the same, we have a special ENCORE episode for you. Today, we are re-airing a conversation with Jo Davis of On Point Community Credit Union. She's talking with us today about sponsorship. As the summer sun glows, this is the ideal time to be talking to sponsors before fall budgeting begins. So we hope today's conversation brings you some inspiration. Then tune in next week when we follow this conversation with advice from the sponsorship catalyst, Mariah Monique.
Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Elevate, an online learning platform for fundraising event professionals. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristin Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. Today, we're here to talk about sponsorship. It's a big part of fundraising events. I think it's a piece of the puzzle that oftentimes organizations are challenged with, especially new folks in the sector, trying to figure out where to even start. So we've invited one of our favorite folks, Jo Davis, who was a speaker last year at the Elevate conference. You brought so much amazing wisdom into this space about
some truth.
Yeah, some truth
to the room as well.
And
that
shared
was good.
knowledge about sponsorship, the role that kind of partnership can have and can play. And we're really excited to have you here to talk with us today about sponsorship.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Of course. So I would like to, for folks who don't already know Jo, more formally introduce her and her amazingness. Jo Davis is the Director of Nonprofit Banking and Community Development at On Point Community Credit Union, serving Oregon and Southwest Washington. Jo has held roles in retail operations, consumer lending, commercial banking, relationship management, and diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout her 20-plus years in banking. In her current role, Jo oversees the nonprofit relationship strategy for the credit union and also focuses on initiatives aimed at expanding access to financial services for historically underrepresented communities. Jo serves on various local boards and steering committees, including Unite Oregon, Taste for Equity, and Women's Foundation of Oregon.
Yes.
So in addition for being here, thank you for all you do for the community.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I want to kick it open today to think about sponsorship from the other side. So our nonprofit friends likely have their definition of sponsorship, but I'm curious, as somebody who does sit on the other side of the table in these partnerships, how do you define sponsorship?
Yeah, sponsorships for us, it's in the traditional sense, it's our organization putting our money where our mouth is and supporting organizations to help where they need the help, whether that's at an event, whether that's a programmatic support. We want to be good stewards of our profits, and a way we do that is through giving back to nonprofit organizations. So it can also mean different things too. I think it's important to understand that a sponsorship that's meaningful for our side of the table includes a authentic, genuine relationship and opportunities to do more than just write the check. We want to write the checks, but we want to be able to tell the story, and we want to be able to follow our impact and say, these are the dollars, and this is how they're showing up in the community.
If you all listen to nothing else of this episode today, keep hitting rewind on what Jo just said.
I think there's an impact that people don't understand necessarily that they can have. One, that it can be a bigger, longer partnership, and that they can even get program funding. Like program sponsorship support is something that a lot of folks don't even consider when they're soliciting sponsor partners. But also that they want to track the impact. They want to understand the difference and sort of what's happening with their dollars. I think a lot of fundraising professionals think the corporation is like the big entity with the big checkbook, and it feels like nerve-wracking to approach. And I once heard a development professional say, no, I am an equal at the table with the person that works for the big corporation. It is their job to identify solid relationships to invest in. So we're sitting at that table as shared partners and can then start to think about how do we best serve our organization's needs. I think that kind of levels the playing field a little bit.
For sure.
But for you, what's the, when someone starts to approach or solicit you about fundraising or about sponsorship dollars, what do you feel is required in a solicitation? What are key elements that you want to make sure people are thinking about before they reach out?
Sure. So I recommend definitely research as much as possible in terms of how the organization would like to receive the requests. So a lot of us are transitioning to more formal processes. Even just a few years ago, On Point was very casual. You would have a verbal conversation, follow up with an email and a sponsorship packet, and then someone sitting in my position would take that and figure out what the decision would be. Now, because we've grown so much and we have so many partners reaching out, we formalize that process. So now we have an online portal where we direct our folks. And so this year, because it's a transition year for us, I think a lot of nonprofits just assumed that we were going to be doing the more casual approach.
Yeah.
And so those that had a strong relationship with us, we're able to take advantage of that quicker than folks that maybe waited a couple weeks before their event. And, now we have a pretty firm policy on we need to see those applications at least 90 days before, for example, an event sponsorship because of our new formal process. So first and foremost, know what the process is and don't take for granted that it's going to be the same year over year. And then just good old fashioned relationship development, right? We can tell when you've cut and paste, cut and pasted on an application, everything you can do to draw connections between people on your team and our team, that comes through very, very strongly in applications. And then know what is important to us, right? We are an education-founded organization started by school teachers. Education's a big area for us. Anytime you can tie in that topic, your application is going to rise to the top because it's a vision and value alignment for us. So know the org, know the nuts and bolts of the application process, and then look for those tie-ins where it'll really resonate for us, and try to customize as possible. We want to be low barrier. We don't want you to have to fill in pages and pages. But again, you can tell when it's a rinse and repeat application. So try to customize it as much as possible so we can see that there's been some thought and care put into that.
In general, do you find that process is public for most corporations or most institutions out there that are giving?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Right. I think it can be inconsistent is what I've noticed, right?
Yep.
And we're very open with the process, but we don't necessarily lead with the nuts and bolts, so to speak. You have to do a little bit of digging, a couple clicks through our website and you're going to get exactly where you want to be. But I've seen some inconsistency in terms of how transparent organizations are with that.
Well, and I think what's interesting too is the thought that, when you're talking about sort of, you have, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, giving priorities, but the idea that sponsorships are organizations with a mission too.
Right.
So I think sometimes sponsors get looked at as the checkbook.
Sure.
And there are a lot of ideas among nonprofits and our fundraising superheroes about, well, they should. Right.
Sure.
They're in the community. They should. And that extra length of understanding how your mission and your sponsor's mission come together. Yep. And that foundationally is the relationship piece is something that can be transformative for both. And I think sometimes we just look at it as what's the transformational gift for the organization, but miss the opportunity to present the opportunity of a transformational gift for the sponsor. And I think in that cultivation, that's where things open up.
Totally.
And you while there is this formal process and there are these things, it's how you know how to enter into that formal process. Having that information, knowing I know how we all come together. I was having a conversation with Joe. Now I'm going to take, whatever all those pieces are, which I think is a really good thing for folks to continue to frame up for themselves.
Yeah.
Along those lines, there is that application moment, which I just want to call attention to. 90 days feels really generous.
It does feel generous.
We're hounding people. We're hounding people year out in umbrella sponsorships and sort of really thinking through giving people time to think about things and have that. But what does beyond the hitting click? What does cultivation look like?
Yeah, that's tricky. I think it's case by case, right? On Point. As an organization, we're really active in the community, so it's not hard to find an On Point entry point. I think we deploy employees on boards. We have volunteers. We have a network of 57 branches. And we have a really significant retail membership base. So a connection to OnPoint, in my opinion, is not too hard to find, but it's that people and relationship piece that's important. So, as many development professionals are out there doing their thing in terms of networking and attending events, introducing yourself to someone, making that warm connection and establishing a rapport, I think is a great first step for folks. Yeah. And don't necessarily lead with the ask,
Wait, can you say that again, please?
Yeah, don't lead with the money, right? Yeah. Like we want to connect, we want to learn, and we get a lot of requests for funding. So to make yourself really stand out, I think the people that I can think of have kind of spontaneously shown up in spaces for me where there was a common topic or something that we were coming together to do.
Right.
And then we had the conversation around, hey, you're a development professional at XYZ nonprofit. Let me share with you the multiple avenues of funding that we could potentially partner on. And then me as an internal advocate can go back to the team that makes those decisions and say, hey, I think we really need to step up for this organization because I was really impressed with this person that I met, and I think they're doing great work. So that I think is really a strategic way for folks to start building those relationships with folks. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the decision maker. I'm actually not the decision maker at OnPoint for a lot of decisions, but I have a lot of influence. And so just know that even though you're not talking to a committee person, impressions matter. And when you can have those casual conversations, they can lead to more serious conversations about money. But don't necessarily, say, hey, I've got an event coming up and next week, and I'd really like to see if OnPoint could sponsor at the $10,000 level or something. Like
next week, $10,000. Don't do that.
So,
you're very generous with your time. I think that you're very involved in the community. You're talking to and connecting to, and often lead with how can OnPoint support. But OnPoint is deploying you in the role of building relationships for their own needs, their own business models, their own growth potential, their own sort of path that they're walking. So I'm curious about other ways to think about that partnership that maybe isn't just event support. And how does it look to be in a relationship that's maybe a two-way relationship?
Yeah, I love that question. So again, going back to impact. So I'm really lucky to work for an organization that is mission driven. Credit unions and banks, we offer the same products and services, but the thing I love about working in the credit union industry, and I've worked in my 20 plus year career, just about 50-50 in both spaces. So I feel like I can really speak to that from a fairly balanced perspective, just from the experience level. Everything we do is mission based. So we do not keep our profits. We have to deploy those profits back to the community. And so as we've evolved as an organization, as we've wanted to serve more communities, we're looking for those opportunities to support economic development, whether that's at the individual level, whether that's with small businesses and mid to large size businesses, but also we know that the nonprofit sector is its own business community in a lot of ways, right? And so
it's a huge sector.
Exactly. Employees, you all, we see the impact that those nonprofit organizations have on our local economy. So we want to be your banking partner, whether that's the nonprofit, whether that's your employees, whether it means that we're deploying volunteers, whether we're looking at your programmatic needs and saying, hey, we want to show up for this specific area where you're focusing on. There's a lot we can do beyond showing up at a gala. And that's the work that really excites me. Don't get me wrong, love celebrating with community at the galas, but the more and more I do this work, the more powerful these programmatic grants and foundation giving opportunities really, I feel those things make a huge difference too. And again, for us, we can tell a great story. We can say, members, because we are owned by our members, we can say, members, this is how we are deploying the money that we have grown our organization with.
What's interesting too, in your vantage point, you have the members you're telling a story to, but you're also And I think this is true for so many folks out there who are sitting on the sponsor side of the table. You are looking to create a workspace for employees and are investing in them in a 360-degree way where they also have personal missions that they want to make manifest. Yeah. And while they may not be able to write the $10,000 check for X organization, by being able to cultivate a relationship with that organization and provide them entry points, all of a sudden, I feel like nonprofits get short-sighted in this, in that you are actively investing in your employees. Yeah. Yay, happy employees.
Yes.
But you are also, in addition to that $10,000 check you wrote, sending them volunteers that then go, this organization, this mission is amazing. And then they get to go into the cultivation cycle as potential donors. Like it's a whole web of relationship and potential that I feel like sometimes when they just say, great, thanks for the event check, I'll talk to you in 90 days out for my next event, that they're missing the opportunity to have a warm pass off.
Totally.
Of folks who could be really excited about what they're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. You need those fans, right? You need those advocates and champions. And that's a wonderful way to build that.
I also think that a lot of times when we have new folks in the sector, they're in fact, I've been in that role where I was like brand new at an organization. I didn't have the relationship with any of the individuals that had sponsored in the past. I was like, I don't even know where to start.
Sure.
The idea of like starting with where you bank, where you do business as a nonprofit, like nonprofits in the name, I think there's an inherent problem. We don't often think of ourselves as businesses, but we are a business. We are the 5th largest sector in the country. That I think we should look first to where do we already have relationships that we're doing business.
Yeah.
And then where is there opportunity to invite people in, you already said board roles, volunteering, those sorts of partnerships. But I think you are so profound and prolific in your support in the community that a lot of times probably you get like big solicitations from organizations you've never met or talked to.
Yeah, it
3
happens.
days out from my event, please sponsor it, $10,000.
Yeah.
But that maybe sometimes the easiest place to start is where those relationships already exist.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, and I think when we're talking about cultivation, there's me as an organization you fund cultivating you throughout the year, but there's also me as a new organization that we're not in relationship yet, and understanding what I need to do to work to a place of initial support and what that can look like, but also having a broader idea of what does initial support look like.
Yeah, sure.
I'm assuming there are instances where you don't fund, but you're like, how do we get some folks in the door to understand if this might be a good relationship moving forward?
100%. And we try to build too. So we may not initially start with a $10,000 contribution, but we try to say yes whenever we can. We have the resources to do that. We're incredibly lucky that we have a very robust giving program. But when it is a no, we try to give feedback. It's not just a form letter that says, sorry, try again whenever possible, particularly when there is a relationship. Again, I had to unfortunately deliver a no this week because of just the tremendous amount of interest we've had. And one of the only ways we could eliminate folks and kind of get that list a little shorter was to use that threshold. Like, did folks get it in, in time?
Right.
And it's heartbreaking, but that's an opportunity for us to educate those folks saying, hey, for next year, make sure that the timing is right. So your chances are a lot higher. But, there's, just because we can't fully sponsor a table, if it's an organization or a cause that really resonates, we'll end up buying a couple tickets and sending a couple folks anyway, right? So maybe it's not that full sponsorship ask, but we always try whenever possible to deploy support. And we have lots of other mechanisms too that we can leverage for certain partners. We use our PR and marketing connections and connect folks. We get 7 million impressions on social media. I forgot the time frame that happens, but it's the point is we have an incredible reach. So even just boosting the mission and the event to try to get folks to attend through our boosting of that are things that we try to do as well.
Well, and you have a member base that's also invested and interested. So I think sometimes we think of the single person at the organization we're talking to. We don't think of the broader implication. We have a great story of an organization that had sponsor partnership. And back in I think this is the height of the 2008 recession. So this is a while ago, but this big, long time presenting sponsor had to cut their budget and couldn't sponsor. And so we just all sat at a table and brainstormed. And in it, we found a million other ways that they could support that year. They did all their graphic design for free with their marketing department. They did a whole marketing outreach campaign. They did a bunch of procurement for auction packages. They served on the committee. The next year, their support was double because they had the funds back and they now had deeper relationships.
Right.
So I think thinking about how that relationship could be a partnership is sometimes requires a little out of the box conversations.
It does. Yeah. And it's not always going to be that you're going to have the chemistry or you hit it off right away. So don't get discouraged, right? That connection isn't there. Be persistent, be thoughtful, and eventually that chemistry will come into the picture. And just to backtrack a second, I believe it's 7 million impressions a month. So just to,
holy cow.
That's
amazing.
Yeah,
wow.
It's our social media platforms are very powerful, and we know that that's the way that a lot of folks are consuming information.
It is,
so when we can boost, we like to do that.
That's
well,
incredible.
and I think that's the way that everybody's going. They're investing a lot of time and resource into getting in front of folks in those ways. So I think folks need to start to see the money is one piece,
right,
but that there are actually a lot of other resources that when you sit and get creative with a partner can be an exchange of ideas and an exchange that benefits both of you. And that's the goal. I mean, if a sponsor keeps showing up and is getting nothing out of it, they're not going to keep showing up. That's just how that goes. And I think sometimes our friends out there try to fight that truth by if I just, right. And it's when they don't see a return, that's business in some way, right? And that's a hard thing for folks, but there are things you can do to move that in a different direction.
Totally.
Well, we're going to take a short break to hear from some of our partners, but things have changed a lot in the sponsorship world in the past few years since COVID. So when we come back, we're going to ask a little bit more about that.
Sounds great.
Unleash the power of events to energize your donors and amplify your mission. Join us at the Elevate Conference in 2025, where you'll learn the essential tools for planning a successful fundraising event. Book your tickets now for March 12th and 13th. This dynamic hybrid conference, hosted at Avenue in Portland, Oregon, and streamed live for our virtual audience, will equip you with practical tools, demos, and templates that you can put to work immediately. Don't miss out. Secure your spot today at Elevate 2025. Visit elevatenonprofit.com to register now. Elevate Conference 2025 is brought to you by Swaim Strategies and the AV Department, powered by elevatenonprofit.com.
All right. Well, before the break, we were talking about the fact that a lot has changed in the sponsorship world. But before we dive into sort of changes that have occurred, I want to ask you about after the event. A lot of the sponsorships you all do have an event element to it. Not all, but a lot of the money you give into the community also means that you are at the event, participating in the event. And I think a lot of the nonprofit world gets to the end of their event and they're tired and exhausted and they end there. What do you see moves the relationship needle when an organization gets to the end of their event? What kind of follow-up or additional outreach do you see is helpful?
Yeah. A personal phone call goes a long way.
Now,
you may not get someone answering on the phone, but when you check that voicemail and you hear a personalized message thanking you for the support, it means a lot, that personal touch. And we know that takes time to do that. Anything you can do to get specific about how those dollars are going to be used. Generalities are helpful, but if I can walk away knowing, hey, that $10,000 sponsorship meant XYZ to our organization, or it helped underwrite this portion of the the work that we're doing, those kind of things. The more specific, the better.
Yeah.
And I also love what orgs are doing in terms of just those standard emails that are going out with the pictures of the events, a summary.
Yeah.
You know, it's a nice way to relive what's oftentimes a really fun moment. Shout outs on social media, I think, are really nice to say, hey, thanks to On Point for a spectacular evening. Thank you for joining us, things like that. I think anything you can do to show gratitude, I think really does make a difference.
Yeah.
But the more specific, the better, I would say.
Do you seek out fulfillment packages at all? Like, do you expect organizations to say, we promised your logo in all these locations, and here's a copy of all of those logo representations?
We are very lucky that brand recognition is not a challenge for us.
Oh, yeah.
So we don't do a lot of follow-up in terms of, we trust the organization that the benefits that are offered to us at the time that we're entering into the agreement for the sponsorship are going to be fulfilled. But we never really go back and check. And we love having our brand out there. It's a part of our strategy, but we don't lead with it. We're really lucky that, again, we're very much a mission-driven corporate philanthropy shop. We're not out there for the recognition. But on the flip side, I know that it brings a lot of value to nonprofit partners for us to be that name recognition that can boost their event, right? We can bring some credibility, and it even sometimes helps cultivate other donations too. So if they see, well, On Point's on board, maybe that's something I need to also be. So we try to meet the nonprofit partner where they're at and what's important to them. If a logo is really important and you want to really boost the fact that On Point's a big supporter, then we're all for that. But it's a very small part of the motivation on our end.
What's interesting about that, as thinking about the members of your organization, though, seeing your logo in alignment with missions that they're personally invested in, there's a full circle piece there as well that I think is an interesting dynamic that sometimes our nonprofit friends don't think about with sponsorship. Meaning, like, it's not I'm tracking my logo was in these 50 places,
right?
But it's that in moving the brand forward and the mission of the brand forward with folks out in the community as well, seeing like, oh, they care about this cause, I do too. And people making some values-driven choices around where they literally put money.
Totally.
But also, you know, all the other things that we do with sponsors that come, and the flip side of that can also be true when you see a brand in misalignment with your, you know. 100%. So I think it's an interesting space that sometimes people don't think about in sponsorship when we're talking about that alignment piece.
Yeah. It's incredibly powerful to be representing a brand like On Point. I mean, I can't tell you, it happens 5 or 6 times a week. Folks are saying, I'm a member, you know, I got my first car loan with you. I was with you back when you were Portland Teachers Credit Union. So we have such a strong brand in the community and such great folks that serve our members that it's like a dream job for me when it comes to the business development part of my role, is that I have such a strong team behind me that really has made a huge impact in people's financial lives. And so to your point, you know, that people think of that when they see that logo, if they're attending an event, you know, that oftentimes it's a very positive connection that they have with our organization. So it's really awesome.
I love that.
Well, you've been doing this work, though, for On Point for a while. And before that, in the banking side of things, you were doing this work. So we have seen a lot of changes since COVID, both because of just how people work, also how people gather, and how technology has sort of progressed quickly. How have things changed on your end? Like, what are the evolutions in sponsorship that you're seeing?
Yeah. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, you know, our organization has grown tremendously. And so with that, you know, we're very fortunate that we've also grown our dollars that we can deploy back to the community. But we reached a point where, from a technical perspective, we had to onboard a very sophisticated platform so that we could create some more efficiencies and also approach things more equitably too. Because if you have people that maybe know a higher up person or an executive, you know, those conversations happen internally. But what about the folks that don't know the people that are higher up, right? Like, we wanted to level the playing field by creating a more consistent experience, and both on the folks submitting applications, but also internally. Like we have a committee of internal folks that make these decisions. It's not just the executives that are deciding where our money goes. It's employees from throughout our organization. And so, it's been a balance of scaling our giving, but also remaining true to our community and to our employees to make sure it's something that we're all engaging in. And these are joint decisions, and that we prioritize, our CEO's perspectives and desires to give, but also to tellers and our IT folks and our administrative folks, right? They have important passions that they're excited about, and that we want to support their interests as well.
I think sometimes when you're sitting in the nonprofit seat, it can feel like a mystery. Like, why did we get funded? Why did we not get funded? Why did we get chosen? So I appreciate you demystifying a little bit the complexities on your side of trying to make sure that you're serving your member base, your employee base, your leadership's goals, your mission that you've already identified that you want to align with. That there's a lot of layers and complexities that go into that decision. So I think that the nonprofit partner showing up at the table as a conversation versus, yes or no, check the box, I think makes a big difference in what is possible.
Well, and I think too, what I want to encourage folks to remember is that, Joe, you represent On Point.
Yes.
But Joe, you talk shop with the other folks who represent the other, right? So, while I might be having a relationship with you, if that's not going well, or if that's going swimmingly, that reputation could precede me in other places. Sure. But what's also interesting is you sit in a place to be able to kind of look and speak a little bit more about some of the pieces of sponsorship, and data showing us that sponsorship or corporate giving is on a decline. Is that your perspective?
I am seeing that anecdotally, and then just really from a very numbers driven perspective as well. I sit on a couple of boards. I do talk to other, philanthropy professionals, and, budgets are tightening.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's really unfortunate because we know now more than ever those dollars are needed to support the work that's being done, to make a positive impact in our community. So unfortunately, I do see that trend's happening. And, there are other things at play too. CARES Act money is kind of coming to its end, right? Like, I think nonprofits really enjoyed, rightfully so, some funds that came from some areas that maybe historically weren't there. And so I'm seeing, not just corporate funds dry up a little bit, but also those temporary infusions of cash, are coming to an end a little bit. So there's definitely a challenge out there. And then not to mention the foundation landscape too. A lot of foundations are reconfiguring and putting pause on their giving. And so that's just another area where
that's been a big impact for some organizations.
Yeah. So we know that's a struggle for our nonprofit partners.
Do you see some of that slow happening in the non-dollar engagements for sponsorship partners? Like, I'm just thinking board engagements or volunteering or those pieces. Do you see some of those also pulling back in terms of monetization within?
Not necessarily, not for us. For us, it's been really consistent. And again, on the funding side, we're very fortunate that we're in a growth mode right now. But I do think that organizations are trying to get creative. If they can't write the check, how else can they show up, support in-kind work, all of those kind of things that don't necessarily require writing a check, but there's other ways. And I do think that volunteers and board service are an untapped resource that on both ends, I think we kind of forget that that's a really powerful mechanism to build really lasting, deep connections.
How much does that impact your giving? If you have employees that are volunteering or on a board, how much does that inform your decision about giving?
Again, we're very fortunate that we, in most cases, are able to help support an employee if they are doing board service to help make a contribution on their behalf. But it's not a given. And so I would caution nonprofits to understand that it's, it's not an automatic. And it may not be the first year. It may be it's something that we work up to, but it's absolutely a huge advantage, I would say, for the most part.
Yeah.
Again, it just all goes back to that. Where are the deep connections? Where is the genuine relationship being cultivated? And, board services, it's hard. And so we try to also equip our employees with the training and the understanding that this isn't just a casual volunteer opportunity where maybe you're going to the food bank and giving an afternoon of your time. There's fiduciary responsibilities involved. They're looking to you to be a thought partner. There's a difference between a working board and a board that's really established. So, having had that experience, I always coach people to ask the right questions and to really understand what you're involving with, because the last thing we want to do is deploy employees that aren't equipped to serve on nonprofit boards.
I love that you spend that time. Not all organizations invest that energy.
It's important.
Yeah, it makes an impact. I mean, when On Point is on a board that we're working with, you can tell the difference in their understanding of mission, role, what they can impact, what they can't, where they need to say no, where they can say yes. There's a lot of clarity there that I don't think that everyone understands. We hear often folks say, my board just doesn't have the connections or the resources. And oftentimes I think it's just that they don't know that they have someone within their organization that they could go talk about, hey, I'm on this board.
Right.
But I think you invest a lot of energy in making sure that your employees know that you give back and that you're a part of the community, and that there's, opportunity for them to come and talk to you. And that's appreciated in a big way.
Yeah.
Because it makes it that when you all show up, there's just a bigger offering to the nonprofit too. It shows up in different ways.
I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about a multi-pronged relationship.
Yes.
And what that can look like. Because I think this is a really interesting space for people to start to think about.
I'm super excited about this question. So I have an amazing example of an organization that we've been cultivating a relationship with. So this organization builds housing. And so they part of their mission is to make sure they're building housing for historically underrepresented communities. So we, from our lending side of the house, are going to be their commercial lender. So we're going to fund those construction projects, deploying $3 to $4 million, I think, this year.
Wow.
And then every year after that, I think it's estimated, at least $5 to $10 million in providing them the financial support to build this housing. So that's one component. We're also going to be their banking partner. So on their deposit sides, their reserve funds, we're going to be able to do some really cool things to help them maximize their money. So we've got their full banking relationship. We have a board member on their board, which is wonderful. He serves as treasurer, so providing that expertise to that organization. He's been on the board since I'm not going to say the time frame, but it's been at least 3 or 4 years. So there's a solid relationship there. We helped apply for a grant on behalf of this organization. It was a 3-to-1 match grant through the Federal Home Loan Bank of Iowa. So we have an executive that sits on that board. And so there was an opportunity to plug in this local community partner. It was a 3-to-1 match. So we got them a $600,000 grant through a different form. But one of my favorite parts about this partnership is that, remember, these are folks building affordable houses. Our mortgage line of business stepped up and said, hey, if you all want to do the mortgage with us, and again, these are historically underrepresented folks, we're going to do a discount on their mortgage for them, which will be transformative for those home buyers to be able to keep more money in their pockets. So that's one of my favorite examples of a multi-pronged relationship where it's very reciprocal. I mean, that's a wonderful story that On Point can tell about how we're making an impact in the affordable housing space, where we're deploying a board member who's got great expertise, leveraging our connections to get them even more grant dollars from other access points that they may not have thought of or been connected to. So that's kind of the gold standard.
Yeah.
We want to build more partnerships like that, but it's taken many years to get there, right? But it's trust building. And then again, it's such a compelling opportunity for us to deploy resources to, that it's really a no-brainer. It was kind of this compounding effect too. Like their name kept coming up in terms of we need to do more. And now we have this amazing partnership. And from a business perspective,
incredible.
they're one of our customers, right? Like they're one of our members.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic too, right? We can grow more the more that we can offer our products and services.
So I immediately think of our fundraisers out there that have come into an organization and maybe don't know that there is a business out there that's had that impact on their organization 10 years ago during a capital campaign, or 5 years ago during a staffing transition where the corporation staff helped with the staffing transition and lent their HR expertise. There are a ton of new tools being launched. Like within just the past couple months, we've seen that CRM tools are understanding that what our partners deliver in the nonprofit sector is so much more than just the check they write. And the need to track that and to be able to share that history with the longevity of the organization so that the development director who starts in 2 years can understand and know the importance of that relationship and continue to cultivate that relationship versus having no idea and coming in and having to try to figure out and see only that, they gave $5,000 in the gala, they raised their paddle or something like that. And that so often has been the case, but our software partners have started to really see that there are so many other things to track that they're building a lot of those in.
No, that'll be helpful.
I think of that story and I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope that they're tracking all that.
I hope that's in the notes somewhere.
Right?
Yeah.
But that brings up an interesting point. I've observed there's a lot of turnover in the nonprofit space right now, right? And that lack of continuity can hurt the relationship between a funder. So I know there's a million things you're doing when you're onboarding your development professionals, but if I were you, I would prioritize keeping those relationships warm with your supporters that have been there year over year. Yeah. Going back to the top of the conversation, understand the basic mechanics of how those requests come through, because we're just as busy on our end. And while we'd love to do the outreach to every single nonprofit that we give to, the onus really is on the nonprofit to make the ask. And so just be really careful when you have those staffing transitions that you're prioritizing updating us on the fact that there are new people that we're going to be working with.
We often coach our nonprofit friends that when there is someone new in the development, specifically the development director role, that's actually the opportunity.
100%.
So this person comes in and hasn't been in a relationship. The organization has, but it's a really great way to be like, hey, Joe, I'm new. I'm super excited about this mission. I know you've been supporting this work for a long time. Talk to me about what that experience has been like, so that it actually gives you a place to say, it's been great, don't mess it up.
Totally.
Or it used to be great. It's not been great. I'm not sure why.
Right.
And then we can level set and be like, how do we make it great again? Like it just is, it can be an interesting time. And I feel all too often people just go, whoop.
Totally.
And then it's like, you don't know what happened. And then you maybe turn on social media. You're scrolling or whatever. And you see this event happen and you're like, we've supported this event for 5 years.
Yeah. Why are we not there?
And I think some people don't think through the cost of the dropped relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Even 1 year gap will kind of interrupt that continuity in a significant way, I would say.
So when you were speaking at Elevate, for those who don't know, we have a conference that's education around how to produce a good fundraising event, and sponsorship's such a key part. We invited you and we invited Megan Valley from US Bank to come and speak. And I learned something from you that day that I'm hoping you'll share, because it was actually a big aha for me that I did not understand the difference between a bank and a credit union and why folks might want to think about a credit union, or how the approach might be different too in partnering with a bank or a credit union.
Yeah. So for all intents and purposes, they operate the same way in terms of products and services. So you can get your checking accounts, your credit cards, your auto loans, your mortgages from both institutions. Where we're different is that banks have shareholders, and credit unions also have shareholders, but they're not a finite group of people that are making decisions. Our members are our shareholders. So every single member owns a share in the credit union. And so credit unions were founded as a response to banks not serving specific sectors of the community. So, we were founded by school teachers that weren't getting what they needed from their financial institutions. So they pooled their money and they said, we're going to start our own thing. And so this was back in the day, right? It was a little bit more nitty gritty. Now we've grown. There are a lot of really large financial institutions that are credit unions. We are the largest financial institution headquartered in Oregon as a credit union. So the biggest difference is the ownership structure. Is, you know, we have an obligation to serve our shareholders just like banks do, but our shareholders look completely different. So what that means is, again, profits are looked at in a very different way. So profits need to be deployed back to the community. So that takes the form of lower rates when it comes to borrowing, higher rates when you're earning money on your cash, low to no fees. You're going to find a lot lower fees in the credit union world. And then again, that community-based approach to looking for opportunities to serve as many people as possible, regardless of their backgrounds and regardless of their financial means. You know, we're mission driven to be stewards of financial education, of the tools that you need. It's not just the money, it's knowing how to make the money work for you.
It's interesting because I think that it's so aligned. The aha I had when you were speaking was it's so aligned to be in a mission-based organization that's trying to address systemic oppressions, to then be able to bank with institutions that are also addressing, you know, those, you know, systems that haven't served. And so I think from a banking relationship, it's worth understanding the difference between a bank and a credit union and the opportunities that exist there. But then you also said that the profits must be deployed back into the community. And I think that that's a real differentiator in that because they must be deployed back into the community, coming and having a conversation with a credit union is probably a eager, friendly conversation. So if you're new in the space of asking for corporate support, talk to your local credit unions
100%.
And get to understand the fact that they can be a partner to you and maybe open the door. I know you said this earlier, your name has influence, that when On Point is on something, other folks come along. So I think that if organizations are looking at who are the credit unions in their community that they can be approaching and talking to, then how does that bring other organizations along? Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to ask Joe to step into the fundraising elevator.
Cool. Sounds great.
Ready to take your fundraising to the next level? Need to get unstuck in your event planning? Now's your chance to connect directly with the experts behind the fundraising elevator. Book a one-on-one consulting session with Sam for strategic planning and fundraising strategy, with Kristin for your program and storytelling, or Mary for your registration and data tools. They're here to provide you personalized answers to all your event questions. Don't wait. Raise more at your next fundraising event. Book your session today at elevatenonprofit.com. You can also find the link in the show notes.
Welcome back. We're here with Joe Davis, On Point Community Credit Union. What should folks be thinking about when they think about their banking relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question. So make sure you're not taking anything for granted, right? We know that general operating funds, unrestricted funds are super important to your organization's bottom line, right? Yeah. And so a lot of times people don't necessarily think about the banking relationship and how that's either adding to that pot of money or taking away from that pot of money, right?
Yeah.
And so look at your statements, check it out. What are your fees? What kind of fees are you paying? Is there an opportunity to revisit that either with your existing opportunity or maybe see what others have to offer out there? Another great thing to look at is if you've got reserve accounts, make that money work for you. And so there are really cool tools out there. One that we're rolling out for nonprofit members. It's just for nonprofits. It's not going to be for for-profit organizations, where we'll be able to offer a product that offers a really high yields in terms of your rate of interest.
Oh, nice.
But it also is going to come with fully liquid accounts and up to $50 million in insurance coverage. So a lot of nonprofits, it's their fiduciary responsibility. It's in their investment policy that every dollar needs to be covered by deposit insurance. So what happens is organizations end up parking money in 250 chunks all over the place. And so we have a solution where we can be your primary institution. We can make sure that those funds are fully liquid at all times, and you're covered up to $50 million. So make sure that if you do have those scenarios that you're doing your due diligence and exploring banking partners that can offer you that flexibility, efficiency, and again, make your money work for you, because it adds up, right? It can be the difference between a program that's continuing, it can be the difference between an FTE, you know, that interest can really add up. And even though we're seeing changes in the market, again, I'm really fortunate to work for an organization that's prioritizing giving back to our community. And one of our strategic pieces of that is this nonprofit high yield savings account. So we, again, amazing. General operating funds, we know that those are precious dollars. So make sure you're not giving any of those away unnecessarily through fees, and make sure you're maximizing it through getting more interest.
I'm hearing from you the need for nonprofits to think of themselves as businesses.
Yes.
And understand, similar to how, you know, individuals put together their own financial plan, or businesses put together their budget and their financial plan for the year. I think in the nonprofit sector, the word itself, I think, teaches us to sort of bird in hand and be in this like starvation mentality. But also, I think that there's a lot of things historically in the sector that have taught us dollar in, dollar out, that, you know, if you bring in a donation of $1, that 90 cents of that has to go directly to the impact. And we're not thinking about how to restructure so that dollar is actually earning us $2 so that we can yield and support to the community. So that need to make that shift and that evolution is something that we've been seeing a lot of, and we encourage nonprofits to keep looking up from the nonprofit moniker and say, but how do you start to yield a profit and make your money work for you?
Exactly.
And I think that's really sound advice.
Yeah, I mean, not spending it on things. Right. So when you're thinking about fees, or conversely, when you're thinking about, I think sometimes people don't understand what a high yield interest rate actually looks on money that's just sitting there. I mean, I think we've all been sort of, we get out of that, right? We get away from that, and we're just, so when it is working for you, that's a totally different.
And it's a great, again, story for us to tell. So if you do just some of the quick math based on the current interest rate that we're paying, which is 4.75, for every $25 million that we gather in nonprofit deposits, we're deploying about $1.2 million back into the community. So it's a really powerful, again, another story point that we can say is like we are, you know, again, deploying those profits back to the community. And so take advantage of those. It doesn't have to be with OnPoint. We would love it if it was with OnPoint. Sure. But every dollar matters. So make sure that you're being good stewards.
Yeah. Let's jump in the fundraising.
Let's do it.
Where we're all headed up. What is a tip or a piece of sage advice you would have for our fundraising superstars out there that can help them continue going up?
Yeah. You know, don't forget, everything is based in authentic connections, right? You know, we all get distracted by technology, our to-do lists, but really that personal connection goes a long way. And be thoughtful and intentional about your asks, right? Like I said, research what those preferred methods are. It may be that the sponsorship packet isn't going to be your entry point into financial support with the organization. Right. There could be a really compelling reason why OnPoint would want to support you through a programmatic grant. We, again, were founded by educators. We have funds specifically set up to support the education community. And so a good example I like to use is if you're partnering with a school and providing a service or a program, the school could actually apply for funding through OnPoint. And it's this beautiful trifecta of a partnership, right? We would deploy the funds to support the programming that the nonprofit's offering to the school. And again, we get to stay really true to our roots and tell this beautiful story of where it's not just money going directly to the school. We're also supporting a nonprofit team that is providing expertise and services that OnPoint can't. So be creative, be strategic, and be thoughtful that's what I would say.
Well, and that's also, in addition to that being a great story, you and your organization can tell. That's a really fantastic story for the nonprofit
to
be able to tell as well, in terms of amplifying impact and creating larger connections. And it's just win-win.
Win-win. Well, for all of our listeners that are in the region, so On Point is in Oregon and Southwest Washington. How do people find out more about On Point? You're giving priorities banking with you all.
Yeah. So I love to connect with folks. So feel free to find me on LinkedIn. I love to connect with others. And then our website, onpointcu.com is a great place to start. Our corporate giving page is very easy to find. Our top little ribbon there has community. Click through community, and you can read all about our various paths to financial support with us and get to know us, right? We have 57 branches. Go in and say hi. Chances are a lot of listeners already have a banking relationship with us. We know that the nonprofit sector is full of amazing employees that bank with us. And so we want to connect in any way possible.
Amazing. We appreciate all that you do in the community, all the organizations that you support. And for those who aren't in the Oregon and Southwest Washington area, look into your credit unions in your community. Yes. I think that there's a wealth of resource that can come from credit union partnership. And I think that it's a lesson that I learned from you about the value of being able to serve the communities that you're a part of. So thank you for being here. We appreciate you. Yes. And for our listeners, we hope that you'll tune in next week. We're going to be talking to Rhea Wong, host of the Nonprofit Lowdown, about making better asks and how to spend more time effectively in the area of the work that will move your mission forward. So be sure to tune in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced in partnership with Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV Department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson, Heidi Christensen, and Adam Breeden. Video production by Shannon Doran. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group. Marketing by Lisa Aragon. Support from Mary Elizabeth, Todd Campbell, John Lyles, and Andy Dowsett. And voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Hey y'all, it's Kristin. Before we leave, I want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like, follow, and subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, share it with a friend. Leave us a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thanks so much for being here and tuning in.
Event planners are discovering Avenue, the Pacific Northwest's new AV Forward event venue, intentionally designed with nonprofit fundraising events in mind. From the 93-foot video production wall to the highest quality sound and lighting, premier AV features are included in every venue rental. You'll find the space and audiovisual enhancements to create your unique and memorable event. Visit avenueportland.com to schedule your personal tour. Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV Department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV Department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life.